Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Reloading Chat. And today I thought I would talk to you guys a little bit about government reports on the expense of incarcerating illegal aliens. And it's interesting that we have data on this because, this is something that the left and everyone else always argues. I get people who come in here, come on Facebook, everything else, and try to say it is illegal for illegal immigrants to collect welfare of any type. Well, it's also illegal for them to be here, but that doesn't seem to stop them. And a lot of people pointed out there's an enormous number of loopholes that allow illegal immigrants to draw welfare. The biggest part of that is anchor babies, and it's hard to get statistics on that because people don't understand, because they don't understand how welfare works. The majority of the welfare that people get in this country isn't for themselves. All right, it is for their children. It's for their children. Your children collect welfare, not you. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They've never seen how the system works. They don't know anyone who's worked at a welfare office. I've had a friend who worked at a welfare office. And she explained how all that works. That's why they tell them they want more benefits. They need to have more kids. They used to have to tell single mothers that. Because you're awarded welfare for your children. They're the recipient, technically, of most of it that's given out. It's to keep children from starving to death, to keep children from being homeless. It's not about the parents. So there are a lot of illegal immigrants who, because they have children that they gave birth to over here, that entitles the family to welfare benefits for the child. And it's hard to get statistics on that. And we can argue those statistics all day long because it's hard to pin it down. However, we do have a government report, which I'm going to link below, and I believe it's on page 68. You can read through the whole report. This is official government oversight documents. So it's fair to say these statistics are probably pretty accurate. But from 2005 up through 2010, the known recorded incarceration cost of illegal aliens in this country was just over $1.6 billion per year for the 6 years recorded in that study. All right, in this data. That meant we were spending over $1.6 billion a year just keeping illegal immigrants prisoners who had committed other crimes in this country. Now, people want to say that's not significant. That's $16 billion per decade. Now, it's fair to assume now with illegal immigration being higher, inflation and all sorts of other stuff, it's very probably higher now 16, 17 years later. But I don't have immediate statistics on that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was over $2 billion. But that's what they were spending. $1.6 billion a year to house illegal immigrants in prisons here and incarcerate them in jail. We shouldn't have to spend a single penny on that. These aren't people who were even supposed to be in our country. Now, the argument that people will make is, well, why can't you just deport them back? That doesn't work. This has been tried in the past, and what do you think happens? Tons of repeat offenders have been caught over the years to the point to where we just keep them here. Because if we let them out and we deport them for committing a crime, they get right back into the country because we have an open border. We have an open border. Now, you start looking at the proposed cost of the wall and compare that to what we're spending just holding illegal immigrants in prisons. And it starts to make a lot of sense of how much money we could save by having an aggressive program that enforces our actual immigration laws, deports all of the illegal immigrants, and puts up a system in place to keep them out. It's actually profitable to do so. People are talking about the cost. It's like, do you not understand where this is going to be profitable? We're going to save so much money that the cost is going to be insignificant. I mean, if you think about it, just what we're spending to incarcerate people so that they can't be thrown across the border and just come back in and offend again, over $1.6 billion a year. It's not that many years before that alone pays for the cost of the wall. All right, it's not that long. In fact, if the wall price gets renegotiated by Trump, it could be a very short time just in incarceration cost differences. Because if it's harder for them to get into the country, it's harder for people to commit crimes. It's harder for them to be arrested, go through the system. And you need to understand, when you think about the criminal justice end, that's the cost of incarceration. All right, what about the cost of the increased crime rate in general? How about the increased cost of extra law enforcement to enforce the extra crimes? How about the loss of property and damage to property and everything else by citizens that has to do with this? How about the medical costs associated with their various assaults? Look, they're the assaults, murders, rapes, everything else. There's medical cost, property cost associated with all those things. All right, there's the cost of the law enforcement involved. There are police resources involved. This cost is a lot more than the $1.6 billion just to incarcerate the ones after they're convicted. It's a lot more. So when you talk about just the crime reduction end alone, I can promise you the crime reduction end alone, that wall will be paid for in less than 5 years, just in the cost saved right there by the American people. Then you get into all that welfare stuff, and I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I honestly believe if we were to extrapolate the little bit of data that we have, that wall would be paid for in 1 year off the welfare savings alone. If we actually deported and spent the money to deport every illegal immigrant, get the wall up, and have a strict border policy, zero tolerance illegal immigration policy, a zero tolerance that we very strictly enforce, all of that would be paid for off of the welfare cost savings alone. All right, that's not even getting into this other stuff, all these other costs. The welfare costs alone, it would become profitable. We would save more money on welfare than we spend by doing this. And then education costs on top of it. You know, another big factor. Look at what we spend on education. When illegal immigrants are making up what percentage of our population? 3% at this point? Is that, am I right? Am I doing the math right in my head? 11 million illegal immigrants versus 319 people in the country? I could be off there, but I think that's around 3%. Well, our education cost goes down 3% immediately also. I mean, you start looking at the savings, and particularly, though, the crime saving, because this is completely avoidable. I mean, the effect on what it costs us in terms of crime, law enforcement, incarcerations is a number that we can directly measure. At least the incarceration number, we don't have any ambiguity. They have that down to the dollar. They can calculate that one. And when you look at that, it would take less than a decade for that to pay for the wall. What we spend just incarcerating illegal immigrants who commit felonies after they're here, 1 decade of the changes in incarceration costs in prisons of them would actually turn the wall profitable at that point, that by itself. But I'd be willing to bet the welfare alone would pay for it in 1 year. I'd be willing to bet the education cost difference would pay for it in less than a decade also. We have multiple different streams of income, technically mandatory spending. So we might as well count them as streams of income that can be generated in terms of savings by paying for this stuff. And so when you really think about it, the cost of enacting it, the cost of enforcing it is dramatically less than what it's costing us not to do so. So, I mean, you want to make budget cuts, you want to cut taxes, you want to cut spending by the government. That is one of the easiest ways to cut spending. Build the wall, deport illegal aliens, enact a very strict immigration policy. The way that it's written on the books, we enforce it. Meaning, if you don't have a legal reason to be in this country, you're deported automatically, thrown back across the wall, whatever. It would actually be financially profitable for us dramatically. That would cut our costs dramatically. And just when you look at those incarceration rates, that alone, and this is most people saying, well, most illegal aliens aren't committing crimes, most of them aren't here to be criminals. Well, if you take all that to be true, just the criminal ones alone, it becomes financially profitable to us to go ahead and build the wall and kick them all out. We save money right there alone just by getting rid of the criminals. It becomes profitable for us to do so off that one. So we could set aside all these others that cost us a lot more money and look at just the biggest, most concerning fact. The fact that there are criminal elements in our country as a result of illegal immigration. Removing that alone would pay for the wall, just by itself. And that's a microscopic amount of the total cost that this costs us. And you know, for people who say, well, we can't do that. Yeah, we have to do that. This country's broke. We're $20 trillion in debt. We damn well better find a way to cut spending or our country is going to go bankrupt. Our country is going to go bankrupt. We're at the point right now to where if they tripled everyone's taxes in this country and started making the poor who don't pay taxes go ahead and pay taxes also, we can't even pay off what we owe. We wouldn't pay off what we owe in 5 years. Every American in this country doubled what they paid in taxes, and we take everyone who doesn't make enough to pay taxes and go ahead and take 20% of their income also, we wouldn't pay down our current debt with 5 years. If we took all that extra money and threw it at the debt, we wouldn't even knock it halfway out in 5 years. That's how in debt we are. So when we start talking about finding ways to cut spending, yeah, we have to find ways to cut spending, and that includes stopping illegal immigration in this country. It is bankrupting us. I'm not saying it's the only thing bankrupting us, but it is an enormous factor. And I mean, just look at the numbers there alone. When you really look at that, that is just the incarceration rates for illegal aliens who shouldn't even be in this country to begin with, who are committing felonies. Again, it's a lot of money. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.